Welcome to the Owner to Owner podcast. I'm Michael Kerr, your host, and I'm also the founder of Kerr Capital, where for 22 years now I've worked alongside business owners. Owner to Owner is a business podcast to empower the owners of Australia's small and medium enterprises. Forget the slick stories of tech titans and unicorns. At Owner to Owner we get raw and we get real. Every Owner to Owner episode is a personal conversation with another business owner just like you. We explore the everyday struggles they face and the different pathways they tread to success. Practical advice and plenty of one percenters for better returns, less stress and more enjoyment. You'll find grit, laughs, maybe a few tears and some hard-won lessons only available from others who've been where you are, whatever your stage of ownership. Every owner has a compelling story to share, so join us to listen and to learn. Welcome into the Owner to Owner podcast. Excellent to welcome in David Brudenell. Australian SMEs are ready to move, but they're missing the map, the tools, the traction. Competing in the future will take more than belief. It needs a system built for action. It sounds like something you'd say. So can you tell us about the work, the research that Decidr is doing into adoption, implementation of AI strategies for Australian SMEs?
Yeah. It's I really like that quote because it talks about infrastructure as opposed to dazzly stuff on the surface, which everybody naturally moves towards with technology. At Decidr, we launched what I believe is the country's first AI Readiness Index. So we went out to thousands of businesses, big and small, and we asked them some pretty simple questions, right? Are you ready? What do you think AI is? What are you doing about it? And do you really have a plan to drive this into your business? And I don't think there's any surprise, but most businesses have neither of all of those four things in their business. And there's this kind of onslaught of information, as you and I were kind of chatting before we first started, like there's this glut of information about AI. And for any business owner, big or small, trying to make sense of it is pretty difficult. And so like as a consequence, I think lots of Australian SMEs are paralyzed, but also, and in my direct experience, over the past, 10 years or so working with artificial intelligence is that people are trying to put this inhuman technology into very human organizations. And I like to use the analogy of, when online came out, right? Retail stores didn't just take their retail store and put it in an online page. It was a different medium, right? It looked different. People interacted with it in a different way. But we're literally trying to take this AI and just jam it into our business, which is the opposite of what we should do, which is let's build a business from scratch for AI first, and then let's figure out how to put humans in it, right?
Yeah.
To guide it.
That's a good parallel. When online first became a thing, there was a lot of fear that a bricks and mortar was dead, and we've had 20 odd years of that. And I think it's safe to say that there's both and there's combos. Sounds like we've reached a stage where market awareness, education of AI and its possibilities, we've achieved that because there's so much noise and so much energy. Now it's about how do you work through that. We also did chat that there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of people spruiking, there's a lot of owners feeling like maybe they're going to jump at this because they're going to miss out. With your readiness index, AI is either an opportunity or threat. What are the steps that we all need to go through to take advantage of the opportunities?
Yeah. Well, actually, just before I start, I was listening to the CEO of Anthropic have a discussion just yesterday, and what he said was if these AI model makers stopped work today, there's still 10 years worth of innovation that could happen. So absolutely, these things are so powerful that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in front of everyone. So that's kind of...
It's like work in progress is built up and there were...
Yeah. There's just this inertia that's just ready to roll. And every AI model, the average time for an upgrade is 7 weeks. So you can imagine how fast this is stacking on the shoulders of giants. So I like to say that because it kind of puts things into context about, you're absolutely right. There's so much opportunity for us, but there's our readiness index suggested that people are largely paralyzed, right? There's just so much opportunity. Where do I start? So to answer your question is, what the data suggested in the study was 90% plus of all small business owners, they were really just using one thing, which was either ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude from Anthropic. And they were just playing around with stuff. And so I think the first step would be businesses. So it's good that businesses are doing that. And most businesses were. I'd say probably the first step is now to go to the next step beyond just basic consumer prompting and really start to look at system design. So businesses can accept that these tools can work across most, if not all, areas of a business. So that I think people should start taking that as kind of a common capability of these tools.
Yeah, there's nothing really that AI can't do for you or your business.
Yeah, in knowledge work, yeah, certainly. Like they're pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and in mold and bakery, maybe not. You got to bake the pie.
Correct. Yeah, correct. But in modern knowledge work businesses, and you can have a bakery and still have knowledge work in it, right? So
true that.
But I think like the first step would be to then actually look inside their businesses and say, where is this knowledge work going and where are these processes? Because I think most businesses wouldn't, it's all this like hidden, we call it hidden knowledge in Decidr. So, you run a small business. I've built small businesses before, taking them small to big. And there's a lot of like that je ne sais quoi, the hidden knowledge of like how you do processes, and really take a moment to look internally and say, okay, what actually, if I drew lines, if there's railroad tracks for my business, like how does a customer flow through all the different departments in my business and who touches those things? That would be number one, is kind of to look internally. And then the second thing is to look at your SaaS tools that you use. Like businesses are actually shaped by their SaaS tools. If when I take a moment and I think about it, you have a CRM system, you have an accounting system, and you literally have workflows where humans tippy tap stuff into a computer. Somebody then takes that report, builds one, extracts it, but AI doesn't need any of those interfaces, right? And so if you're able to map those things through, you can actually put a cross line through many of those structures, because you can shortcut it and almost go back to like the purest workflows, right, of a customer going through your business.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would say is actually look inside, like look at your business and take a moment to map some stuff out.
Yeah, you made an interesting comment. I think it was basically saying, to think ground up. If, like you were starting a new business, the opportunity for SMEs and the challenge is that the business has been around 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and it's built with a few Band-Aids and a few rubber bands, and it is what it is. And to actually take a step back and say, I think this is probably, for a couple of reasons, the best time to ever sit back and say, if you're not familiar with the term workflow or system design, start to get familiar with that, because every single business is a set of those things, whether you're conscious or aware of it or not. And that's where you can start to see how they interact and how you can do everything more efficiently. It's taking some time out or getting the counsel to help you think about your business as a system or a process or a connection of systems and processes.
Yeah. I think people incorrectly assume that you can just plop an AI into your business and it does everything. There's two big problems which come from that. AI is what's called probabilistic, which means that instead of deterministic, it goes through workflows. If you go into ChatGPT and you put the same prompt in 3 times, you get like 3 different results, right, out of it. And so you need reliability, and generative AI has low reliability at the moment. And it's actually, the cost of AI is deeply subsidized at the moment by venture capital. Like remember 10 years ago with Ubers, how cheap they were, right? Compared to now. Yeah. I think I took one in this morning and it was $50 to go, like 5 kilometers, tragically. But that's because, VCs were subsidizing the cost of Ubers to get us to download the app, to build the habit, et cetera, et cetera. When you start chaining together these tasks within a generative AI agent, there's a quadratic increase in cost. So in some cases, like getting AI to do it is more expensive than getting a human to do it. And truly.
Yeah, right.
And so, when we use the word agentic, which it's a new word, and I don't think many people actually know what it means, but it's when you give a system a goal and it figures out the best way to achieve that goal. And agentic can have humans in it. It can have AI in it, but it can also have conditional logic in it, right? And good system design gets you more conditional logic, which is way cheaper than the first two.
Yeah,
humans and AI.
I think it would be good to the AI, this generative AI, which I think a lot of people are familiar with whether they call it generative AI. Do you want to just talk about what that is really, briefly, and then also what agentic AI is, because that's, I think, where we want to have everybody start to think about having agents do work for your business like you would have a human if you employed somebody.
Yeah, sure. And I got to work on a lot of the models that were developed in the world. I worked, in my past. So, I know how much it costs to build a large language model, which is enormous. It's enormous numbers. Yeah. But generative AI. So the first thing for like people listening in is like when you go to ChatGPT and when you type in your prompt, large language models do not understand what you're asking of them. They are just pure probability engines, meaning that OpenAI has 20 trillion tokens in its pool, and a token is like a word. And so all it's doing, it's taking the first word in your prompt and the second word, and it's going into the tokens and saying, how are those words linked? And what is the highest probability of the next word to give you back in your response? And that's why like a company like NVIDIA is worth $4 trillion. Because it's just like a horsepower game. Like every single word goes and hits 20 trillion things. And that's why you need these GPUs from NVIDIA. And that's why like 90% of NVIDIA's revenue comes from like the top 10 tech companies in the world, because they're just slurping up all of this power, right? This horsepower.
What comes to mind is one of those, the balls in a cage, and you wind the handle and, drops out. I can't remember what the name of the game
like
is.
The lottery balls,
lottery balls. Wind it, you get a different one this time. Number 40.
Yeah. It's really what it is. It's just going, okay, you put in the word I like to use the example. It's called vectors, right? That's actually the technical term. And I like to use the word of a house, right? And you have a townhouse, which has a very close vector distance. But then you have the television show with the grumpy doctor, which is house, and that has a long vector distance. And so all that's doing is saying, you used house and used grass. So that means, it's a townhouse. So use that word instead of the television show, Hugh Laurie. So I think that's the first thing to understand is like that these generative AI models don't understand what you're asking about. They're simply running a probability and they're giving you a result. So as a consequence of that, an AI agent or a generative agent, when you ask it to do things, it is simply running probabilities to give you the result. And so they're really good at what I would call like task-based design. So I'll use the example of like book me a flight to Paris is a really good example of an AI agent, right? But if you ask it 3 times, you'll probably get 3 different prices. Okay. Where the world will go to very quickly, and I say in the next 6 months, AI agents or generative agents will kind of go in the shadows, and agentic agents or agentic apps will start to come out. An agentic app is goal-oriented, meaning that you give it a goal and it'll figure out the best way to achieve that goal. And so book me a flight to Paris is an AI agent. You go find me a holiday my family will love is an instruction you give to an agentic agent. And it might go to your Instagram feed and look to see if you like snow holidays or beach holidays.
Yeah.
It'll look at your job title. It'll reference that against a salary database and see how much you could afford.
Yeah.
But then it might ask you questions. It'll say, Michael, do you like, what kind of food do you like? Do you want a holiday, an adventure holiday? So it may ask you questions, right? And off the back of those 3, those are just 3 simple. It would do many, many different permutations, but then it will try and achieve the goal, and it might offer you Paris, but also the south of France or, Antarctica, right? If you end up being, I want extreme cold. And so that's the difference between an agentic agent. But for an agentic agent to work properly, you need a good system design, right? Because then it can do that repeatedly and reliably.
Well, and probably also a clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve, which is for any system, any process without, a sense of this is why I'm doing this. This is, you take it back to the business. Why am I in business, and what's the best mix and use of resources that I've got? What's missing? But it sounds like it's coming at it is coming at breakneck speeds. I know there's one of your reports that I read, and I think it said, "Hello, weary AI enthusiasts," and I really get that, because it's like, it's turmoil and it's breakneck. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It just like, I have AI just to filter information that I've created. I've created agents just to like scan the web and to take all the noise and filter it out to the most important things. But you're absolutely right. It's like for an SME, where do you start? But also like, what's I think going to be really challenging for SMEs in the in the near term is, like I've had small businesses, right? I've spent Saturday morning doing accounts and payroll and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you don't have a beat to think about anything, let alone the aspirations for your company. So we're literally rushing into a world where you can have a system and you give it your goals and aspirations. But like for many SMEs, what is a P&L? What is a strategic forecast, right? What is a projection? And what aspirations do I have? If you're an SME, you'd be like, I just want to make payroll or, I want to be able to spend some time with my kids on Saturday morning, which is an okay aspiration, by the way. But what are those things? Like when you get asked those questions, I think there's many SMEs who'd be like, I have no idea. I haven't ever had time to think about that.
And your financial projections, the use of your financial data is it's a big part of how you measure whether you're succeeding or not. You can have a business with purpose and you can have a business that's, suits your lifestyle, but there's got, be a number and a result as evidenced in your MILB or Xero or whatever that says I'm hitting what I need to hit to, to support my purpose or to have the lifestyle I want. Because you had some time. Did you have time, or one of your businesses got acquired by MILB?
Yes. Yeah, I was a CRO of a company called Flare HR, and we were acquired by MIOB. So, like, I've been connected to small businesses almost my whole career, to be completely honest. But being acquired by MIOB, and then me and the founders, we went in. We actually worked inside MIOB in their financial services arm, and so I was privy to like the actual huge data, right, that SMEs operate with. And you're absolutely right. Like the Australian economy is run by SMEs, but there's not a lot of financial elbow room within SMEs. Like they're running tight all the time.
Yeah, they are. And it's look, I talk about this a lot. The small business owners are using AI, even if they don't call it AI, right? They're using Xero. They're not using it to anywhere near the potential. And the work I do is when an owner comes along and says, like, I'm thinking about selling, and so what are you going to do afterwards? But it's got to come back to the numbers and the horsepower in those AI systems, call it Xero, call it Maya, Reckon, whatever, is incredibly powerful. And it's it's an example of one where you can take a baseline. Where are we today? That's not where I want to be financially. And there'd be other measures and other ways to assess the reason you're in that business financially, and then use all of that. It kind of tends to be used as compliance. Let's get my tax return done. Let's get my quarterly BAS done. The power is in, where do I want to take this? Let's do some forecasting, and that drives decisions. It drives the need to, I need to be more systematic, which is where, then AI opens up. Other AI systems open up the opportunity to actually achieve some of those things.
Yeah, certainly. The number one tenet I always work to is like AI is fundamentally a horizontal technology. And like a good example of that is if you go into ChatGPT or Gemini and you put in a short prompt versus a big prompt, you're always going to get a better result, right, with your bigger prompt because you're giving it more context, right? So AI thrives on context, thus horizontal. But absolutely, I mean, with the tool, like with some of the what we call the vertical AI, so Xero's AI features are what we call vertical because it sits within the accounting thing, are really powerful, and a fraction of SMEs actually use them to their advantage. So I think possibly that's just a matter of time before they become commonplace. But to your point, you want to move fast. This world is moving fast. So the faster you adopt these things, perhaps the more advantage that you'll have and the more time that you'll have maybe to think about other stuff. Really, like our take is to start looking at like how we bring the context together across the business. So it's not just your accounting platform, although that's probably the most important like data sync, right, into them. But it's also, what do your products say, and how do you price, and how do you talk about them, and who are your prospects, and et cetera, to provide that horizontal context. Because like today, a small business can use AI and have the equivalent of like 10,000 employees. They can have a procurement department. They can have a vendor analysis department. These are all things that you can have, but you just need to be able to kind of put them in first, and you need to give them context of what's going on. And the wider the context, typically, the better the result from that.
That's the amazing thing. I mean, you talked about the importance of SMEs in the Australian economy. I think it's true of a lot of economies where the number of SMEs soaks up a lot of the number of all businesses and a number of all employees. And there's this we have a significant challenge coming, which is what's going to happen to all these existing businesses. One of the reasons they haven't been attractive or sellable is because they're really owner-centric. They're viewed as not scalable, which is not what everybody wants. But this is where, you comment about you could have a micro or small business with 10,000, the equivalent of, FTE equivalent of, hundreds of people, if you get all that stuff right. And that's where the opportunity to come in and take on an existing business or start one, is so exciting because there's a lot to take in. But the message is you can have a lot of resources at your fingertips with the right thinking and design.
Hi there, just a short interruption and a message from Kerr Capital. Kerr Capital specialise in advising business owners who want to get sale ready or, as is increasingly common, get approached out of the blue by a potential buyer. If this is you, I know there'll be plenty of big questions and a lot of uncertainty. We're expert at supporting owners in making significant personal and business decisions and then helping create a really strong plan of action. If you want to find out more, contact us at the Kerr Capital website and then we can book a 45-minute no-obligation discovery call. Now let's head back to the podcast.
Yeah, and for the first time, that you can call it different things. It's called either hidden knowledge, it's je ne sais quoi, it's tacit knowledge, whatever you want to call it. But in founders and business owners, you've got a ton of it in your head, right? And you just know how to do it. If you take a beat and you start putting it systematizing it, that's when it unlocks, right? Yeah. That's where you can have a customer service agent talk in the same way that you would talk. And we have real customer examples of where the founder of really specialized businesses have said this is just how I would respond. And that's powerful for a founder who, let's face it, we're all slightly crazy and control freaks and all those different things. But if you know that someone's going to do that, but also it's the average wage in Australia is $100,000, right? That's a big cost for any business to look and grow. And typically you've kind of got three choices when you grow, right? I have to spend a lot more on advertising. I have to spend a lot more on CapEx, right? For a bigger store or something like that. And I have to hire people, right? And all three of those have six figures attached to them, right? Those choices, which is not great. And now for the first time, there's another choice, which is how can I put system-based AI in my business? And I know that's less than six figures, far less than six figures.
Yeah. Is that, and is that why there's your readiness index, was that a particular look at SME readiness or more broadly a business readiness across the economy?
Well, it covers all businesses, big and small, but I think that SMEs have the most to gain from artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I also believe that they are the highest at risk to be disintermediated by big business. And so we're at kind of this precipice at the moment with SMEs. And so that's why I wanted to do this readiness index to establish a benchmark. And it's an index, so we'll do it, at least twice a year.
Yep.
I think I want to do it a little bit faster because how fast AI moves. You can kind of it can give direction to SMEs and also, Australia,
and to policy
government is not doing that great when it comes to AI.
Yeah, well, there's a few organisations that could step up because that trend, the way, we've got this triangle, a small number of giants, we've got a not insignificant number of medium-sized businesses, and we've got this huge. So in reality, good businesses out there, small, medium enterprises are getting picked off by bigger businesses. They grow, or by the medium, and then the medium gets picked up by the. So we do have a real issue. So, and I agree entirely that the opportunity is to scale, make more resilient all this massive base of small, medium, micro enterprises. And so that readiness index, I suppose by nature, it's going to reflect SMEs because they make up, X percent, well, 90 whatever percent of all businesses.
Yeah, it does. Because for the first time, this is like AI is like electricity, right? Everybody has access to it. The same thing, right? So for the first time, SMEs have like an equal chance at an enterprise actually getting it right. And actually, my argument is that because they're less sophisticated, they potentially can add sophistication at a better rate than an enterprise. Because enterprise are just like these huge beasts with tons of levels and, let's face it, like crazy humans in every single area. But if you're a founder, you're only one crazy human, right? And if you can grapple with yourself.
And you're the boss.
And you're the boss. So you can like
you just roll it out.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's a lot to gain. And like this world we're going into, you don't need a CRM system. Your platform will find prospects for you, right? It will build a website in real time for the visitor based on their values and how they want to read the product description and the service description. Like these are realities, right? That are, they're already here. We've done it with some of our customers, but that, like I call it the baloney piece. Like if all that baloney, the administrative baloney, that's handled by AI, just like when you get like, I don't know, it's been a long time since I opened the bonnet in my car to like look at the engine to see if it works, right? And to understand like, are all 6 pistons working in my car? Like that's what we're doing in businesses today. We're literally going into the engine room every single day and being like, okay, does this piston right? Is the spark plug, spewing petrol in the right way?
Yeah.
That's going to all go away, which will allow us to kind of enjoy the journey, to kind of take my car analogy a little bit further. And that's now you're talking about the higher level human stuff, which is hard, by the way, because most people don't have a lot of great products, but now they'll be forced to have great products. And so I think
or make them real quick,
make them real quick. Yeah, fair enough.
Because, they all have, what they do all have is some recognition in their market or their geography. So, and this is, it's a constant challenge to keep finding the next sale or doing the next client, next deal. It is truly mind blowing. Probably to the extent where I can imagine some people just going, I'm checking out, I'm out of here. But look, I think for the others, though, and there's many of them, how does this with Decidr? We haven't really covered what Decidr does. You're the executive director. What briefly does Decidr do, and how is that there for businesses, small businesses?
Yeah. So Decidr is essentially an agentic platform, business platform that's built specifically for SMEs. And so you can take the tools and the data that you have in your business, like Xero, like Shopify, like Google spreadsheets, like we all have a Dropbox folder with God knows what's in it, but important things, right? You can connect all those things to your Decidr operating system, and that configures itself to help to be your AI business. And so it's a full end-to-end operating business. You have to participate in it, right? You drive it, you give its code of conduct and things like that. But it allows small businesses to kind of unshackle from all of that administrative hidden tasks and focus on the important stuff. And like what that actually looks like is you connect your data to your business. It syncs in, it kind of seeds the intelligence. It's like a brain. And then it goes out and starts to create and manage the data itself. And then you have what we call agentic apps, which sit on top. So that could be like, you can have a sales app on your website that knows the product ingredients better than any human, can speak in 72 languages, is available 24 hours a day, right? And can transact, and knows if it's an existing customer. Like it can do that. It can go all the way through to checking your bank reconciliations and, chasing up invoices. So it's a full end-to-end business that you can get. And you could choose to use as much or as little as you want of it. That's how we've structured our pricing and our design. So you can just start really small, but then build up as kind of market forces take it or you get more comfortable.
So it's connecting disparate things and systems. Yeah. And that's like, I think that's one of the biggest frustrations. We had a laugh about it, but we all know it. Founder, we're all founders, we're all a bit loopy.
Yes.
And try to do everything and get frustrated when, why doesn't that thing connect with that thing? And
yes.
But, we've got to move on to accept that there's a way to do that. So Decidr might be an example. There's a lot of hype out there. So it's good advice always to know what you want. You may not always have the answers, but, to know what you want and therefore to be able to say, a lot of the hype and sizzles being sold out there as, easy fix things using AI may or may not be what you're after.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like absolutely true. Like what you said before is it hasn't changed in the past, 50 years or so. If you have good data in your business, you're generally a relatively successful business outside of anything else, right? Yeah. And our platform, like it starts at $99 a month, and you can have a system manage your data for you. So I think there's a lot of businesses will get a tremendous value out of that because it'll take your Xero data and it'll take your CRM data and it'll build it together into a single record, right? And then it manages it. So if it can go out onto the web, it can look inside, it can talk to other elements inside the business. And so it's a bit of a hyperbole, but if you had perfect data all the time, what would you start to do? Right. And it gives all these new choices for businesses.
Yeah. See, I reckon there's a lot of business owners that wouldn't necessarily, there's things that are pockets of information in their business that they might not even call data. Where I see it is that, someone comes along and says, I want to start thinking about selling my business in 3 years' time. And they're central in all of the key relationships with key clients. And so I don't need a CRM because, but the buyer will, if you're going to get some values. But I think a lot of those businesses would have information that is really data. It's a matter of, searching for it, extracting it and using it in a more effective way. Because, most businesses will have a trail of email for 20 years, on their server, or they'll have, out of Xero or MyOb or whatever, a whole bunch of past clients. So I'm imagining all this is information that can become data with the right tools.
Yeah, exactly that. There's I like to use the example. I think there's many businesses that you just, use Google Mail as their CRM, right? And you've got a customer coming in. In our system, if your Google Workspace or Gmail account is connected into Decidr and Xero, it will automatically link that conversation to that Xero customer record, right? And now you're going to say, wow, okay, it's just there, right? And so I think, for companies wanting to, package their business for sale, like going into and using tools like Decidr or other tools, right, can be extremely helpful for the next buyer and setting them up for success. But I think like when I'm listening to what you're saying, it's like, if you have good systems, you systematized your business, that makes it more valuable, right, to a buyer, but the intrinsic it has more intrinsic value because it's more valuable to you, right? Because it's now systematized.
Yeah. Well, this is the conundrum of exit planning, if you want to call getting ready for sale planning. Like, don't do it just for the potential buyer in the future. Do it because it makes sense today to get more out of your business. And on occasion, I've seen business owners who have started to do that sort of, and then all of a sudden they realize in 12 months the business, they use this term, falling back in love with my business. It's a bit less stressful, a bit more profitable, a bit more enjoyable. So I don't feel under the same need of pressure to actually try and sell it. So it's a great thing to be thinking about how resilient or systemized your business is. And I reckon a lot of owners would equate systems and processes, not all of them, but with manuals, and that's we've gone way past that. You need an internet or a data or a web-based version of these things that used to be the manual, how to your workplace safety manual and sit on the shelf somewhere. But all those things, everything's that much easier to create.
Yeah, and I think like what small business owners sometimes forget is like, where can the data come from to train these systems? So you and I are having a video call now. This is going into a transcript, right? That becomes available for an AI system to now understand and to parse and to use. And so if you're a business owner, you can just jump on a Google Meet or a Teams meeting with your staff, make sure it's recorded. That becomes like institutional knowledge that's now available for your system. So it's actually not even that hard. Like, it's not like you have to sit down as a business owner and like hand code every customer record that's in there. Like, those days are long gone. It's now a matter of like, I've just got to connect the right systems together. And then I have to like review. So instead of becoming the writer, you become the editor, right? And that's an easy thing for a business owner to do because it's tack knowledge in your head. You're like, oh, change that, and off you go.
It's a bit of discipline to get the system, to turn it on, and then to start, because I think everybody's pretty comfortable talking or most people are, in a meeting to themselves with a dictation, but get all this stuff out of your head into a file,
Yeah, yeah.
and not a
And you don't
physical
even do it
file.
like some of these systems now, they're automatically connected in. So you don't even have to
Yeah,
like
right.
do anything, right?
Yeah,
You're just installing the app or you're installing the solution. And you just have to, I have to remember to stop using so many swear words, but you have to use when you're like, it just goes into the organization. And
yeah.
AI
It
is perfect
becomes
memory.
part of the infrastructure.
Correct. Correct. And like remember too, like these large language models were trained on all of the intelligence of humanity. And AI will know how to use zero better than any human because it's read everything. It's read all their documentation. It has read the ATO and all of you just got to point it to the right places. So it knows all that stuff already. So if it knows all that stuff, what's next to do?
Yeah,
And that's the exciting part, which
yeah,
that's the baloney piece that I keep going back to, which is all done. And now how am I going to spend more time with customers?
yeah, yeah. And this is a like an existential question for most owners of most small businesses. What's the best use of my time? What do I enjoy doing? What am I good at? And what's best for the business? Sourcing has been a thing for 10, 15 years. That's patchy, can work well, but not to say AI is going to be the silver bullet, but the potential to have an FTE equivalent of thousands of staff is a real thing. And why not be that business you dreamed of? Where you're the king of, the queen of something in the business. Maybe it's product design, maybe it's sales, maybe it's customer relations. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
One of the most, I'd say, like hot sectors of customers in our business is one I never even thought about. It's the hospitality industry. It's pubs and clubs.
okay.
And
Cool.
yeah, so we have a partnership with eBev, which is like the country's largest kind of online platform for buying spirits and beer and soft drinks, right? So it came from that partnership. And they have thousands of venues and thousands of suppliers. So think of like Jack Daniels and Asahi and Coca-Cola are the suppliers. And, the Kent Street Hotel, which is around the corner, Kent Street Pub around the corner is one of their customers. And so to your exact point is what does a business owner want to be doing? With the staff at these hospitality venues, what do you want them doing? You want them spending time with customers face to face, right? And I don't know about you, but, whenever you want to book a venue for, somebody's birthday party or something like that, half the time they never call you back, the manager, to book it. That's a perfect use case for artificial intelligence, which knows all the available slots. It can offer a beverage package. It knows all of the details of the venue perfectly, just like a manager would. And so we're getting lots of traction in those places because, staffing is always tight in hospitality venues, but this AI can pick up all that.
Hard to find, firstly, hard to find people.
Yeah, how to find people. Yes, yes. Yeah. And so if all the bookings are done and the front end customer service is brilliant, that means the manager can spend time greeting the people as they come in and giving them an amazing experience, right? And gross margin goes up, you get more beverage sales, like all the positive stuff of like human to human interaction, which comes out of it. And so, yeah, it's like these, I guess I like that example because it talks to what does the real success of the business come from? Well, it actually comes from human to human interaction, but it's amplified by this kind of AI infrastructure that sits behind it.
Yeah, and hospitality is a dominant industry, and if you can make a case and make it work, there's a lot of other business types or industries where the same thing should.
Yeah, because I think we're moving from like in the bricks and mortar world, it was full self-service, right? You go to a David Jones, you meet somebody, right? With online, we went right to the other side, which is full self-service. Where I think we're going back to with AI, it's called like AI full service. And so you can give a full service experience, but without like the cost of human labor on it. So I agree with you. I think there's many businesses and sectors that will kind of be revived, right, with this amazing service-led thing. But it takes the founders to be like, this is how we this is how we talk to a customer. This is how our service is. And the great thing about AI is it has perfect memory. You'll do exactly what you say. Right. If it's built on with good system design.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something I think about a lot is, this impending issue of 2.6 million small, medium businesses, 60% of which are zero employee. So, but for the owner of that business, there's a lot of opportunity. But for the rest, I love the energy of startups, but there's a lot of perfectly strong, already started businesses that I think could be blown up, scaled. So, they've got customers. There's a whole lot of things that you could do better, and AI is the way to do that. So, don't, there's a lot of those opportunities.
Yeah, I think the default for many small businesses is like a protectionist default. How do I save costs? How do I get the most out of my kind of what I have? And yes, like AI can give you more kind of employee outputs per unit. But I think to your point is like the productivity side is, wait a second, I can find more prospects. I can talk to my prospects 24 hours a day, just how I would. And so there's a lot of like really exciting. I agree. I think like businesses, yes, the startups are cool and all that stuff. But, if you think about like the startup gates, kind of the big moments in a startup. So you go from one person to a few people, big leap, right? You go from 5 people to 20 people, big leap. Like, what do you need to do? You need to start at 50 people. Your FP&A, your finance department needs to get bigger. You need to have an HR person. Like, you get to go those choices at those leaps and say, well, wait a second, maybe I should look at a system-based agentic opportunity here. And that gives you the power of, a full 20-person FP&A department, right? Instead of just one.
Yeah, it's there, DCB. All right, this is a good opportunity to talk about a couple of things to close out on today. Like it's a ripper discussion too. You're doing it. I see a lot of the businesses that need to do it. So it's just don't leave it. Leave it too long.
Yes.
What two questions. The first one: if there was more widespread take up of AI, how do you see that flow through to the broader economy and competitiveness with other economies? Is it opportunity missed? Is it great for everybody? Where do you see that at the economy level?
Yeah, like at the sovereign level. So our data suggests, what does it suggest? That Australia is more likely today to be an AI consumer as opposed to an AI creator. That's the risk, right? And so I'm concerned about that. What could it be if we really, dig in and we start to be an AI creator as an economy? I mean, it depends on like which study you're looking at, but the general consensus is like over the next 10 years, there's roughly about 15 trillion in kind of value that's going to be created. And if you kind of look at that as around 1.5% per year, it's not going to be linear, but that's a pretty big leap, right? For our economy, which our GDP is relatively flat, to grow by 1.5%, you're looking at like that's a 50% gain in productivity, right? For an economy. So it's very, very big, the gains that you can have. And we're going into what's called like agentic commerce. So that's when AI does business with AI, right? So when a lot of the asymmetry of information is removed, that means the economies can move more quickly. You can find more customers more quickly, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think there's also an accelerator which comes out of the back of that from innovation and just general. You can use that readiness or resiliency. I like that word better when you think of like at a sovereign level. You want to have a really resilient economy that can adapt to all these new things. So we need to quickly put in agentic infrastructure into like sovereign agentic infrastructure in this country. And, that's good. Find we can get some value out of the NBN. So that'll be good. So we can start activating it, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody has like, yes, there's a lot of businesses that are, just getting on their websites, but like we can bring everybody into the age of AI. Like all the infrastructure is there. And it's just about, we've just got to have a few things to get everybody on. And then once you're on, like it moves so fast that the whole country can be lifted.
Yeah. All right. So you got, you gave up your role as exec director at Decidr because you got an offer to run the Australian Federal Small Business Department, and you had to lob into Canberra on Monday. You got a big meeting with all the press secs and the dep secs and whatever else.
Okay.
What are a couple of things that you're going to demand that get implemented or legislated to help us?
Okay, so wearing my blue suit with a blue tie, as the politicians do. Okay. Federal Minister for Small Business. I probably do a couple things. Number one is what do small businesses need? They need cash flow. They need cash flow to be able to invest into these things. So number one, I'd look at lobbying to change the CapEx treatment rules. So currently you can't capitalize data cleaning. You can't capitalize schema design. You can't capitalize some of the system builds and rebuilds. So I'd look at the treatment of those things so that especially those medium-sized businesses can capitalize that, which I think will really help with their cash flow and their balance sheet settings.
So it's got to be OPEX.
Yes.
And therefore it takes it out of today's cash flow, whereas you might, even if it's CapEx, be able to finance it or recognize it as a thing of value. Okay, that's pretty...
Yes. So that's why everyone's playing, especially mid-size, are playing around with these little point solutions, because you have to fund it out of OPEX. Yeah. But if you could capitalize it, then you can take a longer-term view, right? If you're taking a 3 to 5 year view of now your system build for your AI, right? Imagine what the management team is thinking about now and the boards are thinking about. So I think that would be one of the big things. So it changes us from short term to long term, because this is a big technology shift. Let's face it. And, we went through this online before, so we should know what it's like. So let's just get ahead of it. So that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing is the federal government has a lot of, and sometimes state government. So I'm going to take a little leeway in the question here, but there's payroll tax rebates that happen when you want to bring and train workers in. Let's give those payroll tax rebates for AI work, right? Because if AI is going to do workflow, if you can justify that you're expanding and growing your business, which the federal government wants, right? They want more tax dollars. So if you can show that you're going to improve your top line and your tax base, tax contribution, then maybe there's payroll subsidies that could come out of the back of that. Payroll is pretty good. It's a pretty big number. It's 8%, right? That I could work with. And the third thing is I would really relook at the R&D rebate scheme to really encourage and educate small businesses on how to do it. I would make it very easy for businesses to get rebate on R&D. I've been using the R&D rebate for many, many years successfully, but it's a bit complicated. You've got to have infrastructure. You have to do it the right way, right, to do that. And I think, and maybe the last thing is just training programs. We need to move fast to get these the right curriculums for small businesses.
Yeah,
City of Sydney did a cool one. $10,000 grant to invest in online and digital. Right, that's a great.
Was that City of Sydney? You said.
Yeah. They put 75 million against it. So that's 7,500 businesses, round number, right? That can take advantage of it. And 10 grand is a lot. That's enough to get started, right? And for AI, that's a lot of AI you can buy. That's a year's worth of Decidr licenses for
that's a bit, otherwise it's a very, to your point about OPEX, CapEx for, it's a very big chunk of someone's budget. But we do. We need to think about this as infrastructure. Otherwise, and they're excellent points, DCB, by the way. I love them. But if we're going to go from consumer to creator, we need to broadly think about all of this stuff as developing an infrastructure and a mindset that where we can leverage our businesses, scale them, and compete. Go over,
Yes.
Take it overseas.
I think back to imagine 20 years ago, if the government had done that for an online business, let me help you capitalize how to build your website. How different would this country look? How many unicorns would we have, right? Coming out of it. So that's my take. That's my take in camera with my blue suit on.
Well, you might get a job offer. I don't know. DCB, that is a ripper chat, as I said. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Power to Decidr and your team to doing what you do. I look forward to keeping in touch with what you do.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Michael, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, and I'll see you soon. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Owner to Owner and got some helpful advice and maybe some more clarity on how to make your business work better for you. To subscribe or to listen back or to access any of the resources or information we talked about in this episode, head over to the website owner2ownerpodcast.com. owner2owner.com.au. Or you can search up Owner to Owner podcast on your favourite pod player. If this episode or the podcast generally is really helpful, I'd love it if you could leave me a like, a rating or a review, but even more than that, I'd love it if you could share it with another business owner. There's a new episode out every couple of weeks. I'll catch you then.